Hey, Ben Baxter here with Anglers All. Today we're going to tie up the Shafer's Tungsten beadhead gummy crane for you. Starting with a 35085 nymph hook from Fulling Mill in a size 8. This is a black nickel. The bead I'm using is a tungsten coffee 5/32 or 3.8 millimeter tungsten bead. First thing I'm going to do is wrap some wire in a .020. I'm doing about 15 wraps here. Break that off. Just clean that up a little bit. Kind of center that in the hook there. And I'm going to use a little bit of Loom UV glue clear. I don't want to use super glue because that can take away from the durability of the worm material we're going to use for this, for the body. It can fall apart pretty easy. It just breaks the material down really fast. So that's why I'm using this UV glue. Hit that with our light. We can start our thread. I'm using a UTC 140. This is a dark brown. I like this more flossy thread for tying in that worm material that we're going to use here. Just cover up those thread wraps really good. Trim out our tag with the thread. Now I'm using a amber. You could use a darker color if you want. It's going to be our ribbing. It's brassy size again. Just tie that in along the back side of the shank here. This part is important, the order that you tie these in. I'm using the sow-scud back. This is a brownstone. You could use an amber or a tan if you wanted to. Use that thread, make sure you get that scud back pretty square on top of the shank here. And then we're going to tie in our flash. And I'm using a medium mylar tinsel. You could use either the gold or the silver side depending on what kind of flash you want to come through, but I'm going to tie the silver side down. So once I flip it for the flash at the back of this fly, the silver will actually be up. And vice versa, if you wanted the gold to show up, you could tie the gold in color down to the shank. And then when you're ready to wrap, or fold the tinsel forward, so you can see I've got my silver there. So go back up close to the head here, or the bead. And I'm going to tie in. I'm using a Squirmito material. I believe the original was Squirmy Wormy. It's a little more solid of a color, but the Squirmito seems to work just fine for you. So what I'm doing, I don't know how well you can see this, I'm putting my material down, my worm material, and then I'm pinching my thread and pull down. That'll help capture that. This worm material is really slippery, so trying to capture it without using some sort of technique like that can be challenging. Sometimes you'll get lucky, but now I'm just pulling on the material, not too hard, but just to stretch it out, help it get close to the shank there. And as I wrap back forward one more time, I'm just going to try and go over some of those larger bulky spots just to kind of pinch those down. And I'm going to go back to where I want my flash to end. Again, we're going to be folding this flash forward, so I just want a little bit of the flash on the butt of this. This is the tricky part, is getting the right amount of tension on this worm material as the Squirmito as I'm using, as you're wrapping it forward. One thing I like to do is use my thumb, and then I'll use my eyes as a gauge, kind of see, make sure that these two pieces, these two wraps are as even as the one next to it. And then I'm going to use my thumb to kind of roll it back so the wraps are really close together. Same thing, we're going to roll that back onto the wrap behind it. And if you want to, so you don't loosen that up again, you can even pinch here. I know my fingers are going to be in your way, but just part of keeping those wraps even. Again, I'm using my thumb to kind of push back, roll those wraps back on each other. I'm going to pinch here, hold that tight, and then just bite just a real tight wrap into that worm material, and do one more. And then I'm going to pull my worm material back. This will help keep that material close as you start the next wraps after you fold your flash forward here. So if you keep wrapping behind the worm material instead of in front of it, then you're going to have a big thread gap in your worm material wraps, which would be back here. If I kept wrapping here instead of in front, then you'd have a big gap of worm material right here, or of thread material. So I'm wrapping in front. A couple good wraps to secure that flash in. Snip that out. Go ahead and advance your thread forward. And then we're going to go ahead and continue our worm wraps. Pinch, grab material, roll back, pinch, grab material, roll back, pinch, and just repeat that all the way forward on this fly. It really helps keep that material even, and you can even use this finger to kind of help wrap back, give yourself some room. And I always do one extra one, even though it looks full already. I do one extra one, otherwise all of these wraps that I've done will kind of want to roll forward into the back of the bead there. It just kind of helps keep them all in place. Fill in that last little gap there. And then same thing, we're gonna bite down real hard on that so our wraps don't come undone. And then I do a couple wraps in front and back behind again. Again, you don't wanna be stingy with your wraps with this material because it's so slippery. I'm probably doing 20 wraps here. I mean, it won't show up on the bug because you're really just smashing this material down. Try and pull real tight. Cut that excess worm material out. We're gonna go ahead and fold our scud back forward. Now with this, what you want to do is a real loose wrap. You know, I don't want to pull this super tight. Kind of keeping it, I mean, a little bit of tension on it, but not much. Bite down on that. I don't know how well you can see that. Here, I'll show you again. So what I'm doing, instead of holding it straight here and then doing my wrap over, because that'll kind of want to make that, see, you saw that material slide, the scud back. So what I'm doing is kind of pulling it and then working into it and then bite. A couple good wraps. And again, if you have a little bit of worm material sticking out somewhere, it's not the end of the world. This fly does not have to look perfect. The segmentation on these crane flies is not always symmetrically even. Fold that scud back on itself just to make sure it doesn't come out. So again, pull tight on that, trim that off. Couple tight wraps. Now we're gonna wrap our wire. Do one wrap at the back just so it kind of bites in. I'm using my finger to start these wraps because again, this material is really slippery. See, it's wanting to slide on me, so I'll just kind of move that, try and move that wrap forward as much as I can. And that back wrap is gonna be a little loose, which is fine. And we'll do our second wrap, and again, these are kind of loose. You can hold the material in place and then kind of pull tight on that wire wrap so it doesn't come undone. And we're just gonna work our way, again, kind of light wraps, and then once you're over the scud back, then you can pull down. Again, use your fingers to kind of hold that scud back on top of the shank before you bite, otherwise I mean, these are all very slippery materials, so giving yourself the best advantage, kind of holding everything in place as you're wrapping this wire is your best option. I keep putting my fingers in your way, sorry. Do an extra wrap behind the bead here with my wire. Same thing with the wire. I'm gonna wrap in front of it and then back behind. Really helps secure everything in. It really pinches that wire in place. And we'll helicopter that guy off. And then if you have a whip finish tool, you can use that. I'm just gonna use my fingers here. Just real loose wraps. Pull tight and do a couple here. Got that in. Trim our thread out. And last but not least, use a little bit of that balloon UV again. Again, you don't want to use super glue because it'll break down that worm material and the whole thing will just kind of fall apart. So I'm just kind of covering all those thread wraps with this UV glue. Come back and hit it with our light. That's pretty much it. The tungsten bead head gummy crane, Joe Shafer pattern. It's you can tie it in a jig style if you're fishing Euro nymphs. Even this is a point or an anchor fly, and get those bugs down, get your rig down real fast. Super heavy and no real resistance on this fly, so it'll drop through the water column really quickly. Check us out on YouTube, Instagram, like, share, subscribe. We also have a Facebook, Anglers All Fly Tires Anonymous group that you can look up. Thanks for watching.